If everything you loved faded away, what would remain? Once, in a quiet village nestled between golden fields and shimmering rivers, there lived a young woman named Elara. From the moment she was born, the villagers believed she was blessed by the heavens themselves. Her beauty was beyond words, like a painting crafted by the gentle hands of angels. Her hair cascaded like a river of silk. Her eyes sparkled with a light that seemed to hold 1,000 sunsets, and her laughter, soft and pure, was said to heal the weary hearts of those who heard it. As Elara grew, so did the admiration she received. Wherever she walked, flowers seemed to bloom brighter. Men from distant lands traveled for days just to catch a glimpse of her. Some brought gold, some brought promises of kingdoms, and others brought their hearts, laid bare at her feet. But Elara refused them all. She believed, deep in her heart, that her beauty was an eternal gift, a crown she would wear forever. "Why must I tie myself down?" she would say with a gentle smile. "This beauty is my power, and it will never leave me." Seasons changed, and years slipped by like grains of sand through trembling fingers. Yet, Elara stood tall, her pride and her beauty growing stronger with each passing day. But impermanence, that quiet, patient truth of life, waits for no one. One morning, as the dew still kissed the earth and the village awoke with songs of birds, Elara caught her reflection in the river. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, a tiny line beneath her eye, a slight dullness in her once radiant skin. She brushed it away, laughing. "It's nothing," she whispered to herself. "Just a bad mirror." But day after day, the mirror told a truth she could no longer ignore. The glow of youth was slipping from her grasp. The villagers, once full of admiration, began to speak in hushed tones. Some looked at her with pity, others with indifference. Fear gripped Elara's heart like icy chains. She tried everything to reclaim what she had lost. She bought rare herbs from wandering healers, drank bitter potions under the light of the full moon, prayed at ancient temples, and even wore charms around her neck, hoping to trap time itself. Nothing worked. Her desperation grew wild and dark. One night, standing before the village shrine, Elara made a decision that would stain her soul. She spread rumors about the younger girls in the village, whispering cruel lies into the ears of powerful men. "If they cannot see anyone more beautiful than me," she thought, "then I will remain the only light in their eyes." For a time, it seemed to work. The other girls withdrew into the shadows, ashamed of scandals that were never theirs. Elara basked again in the hollow admiration of the villagers, pretending not to notice that the applause now sounded thinner, more forced. But karma, like the rising tide, does not forget. It began as a small blemish on her cheek, just a tiny mark, almost invisible. She covered it with powder, with smiles, with denial, yet the blemish grew. Soon, strange patches appeared on her skin, rough and painful. Her once luminous hair dulled, her body weakened, and a mysterious illness took hold of her. She went to healers, begged the monks for prayers, wept under the stars, but nothing could undo what had been set into motion. The village that once adored her now turned its face away. Mothers warned their children not to look at her. The men who once fought to win her heart now crossed the street to avoid her gaze. In the solitude of her crumbling home, Elara sat before a broken mirror. The face staring back at her was unrecognizable. Tears streamed down her hollow cheeks, not for the loss of her beauty, but for the loss of herself. for in chasing the illusion of eternal youth, she had forgotten to nourish the only thing that could have truly lasted, her heart. The river outside her window continued to flow, uncaring. The sun rose and set, as it always had. The world moved on, as it always would. And in that silence, Elara asked herself a question she had never dared to before. If beauty fades, then what remains? Days blended into nights, and nights into endless shadows. Elara, once the pride of her village, now lived like a ghost, hidden behind walls that could not shield her from her own sorrow. She rarely stepped outside. When she did, the villagers would lower their heads, whisper behind cupped hands, or pretend not to see her at all. Loneliness wrapped around Elara like a second skin, heavy, suffocating. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in soft bruises of purple and gold, Elara sat by her window, staring at the empty road. Her heart, once so full of pride, now ached with questions she had no answers to. It was then she saw him, a solitary figure, walking slowly, staff in hand, robes flowing gently with each step. An old monk, his back bent by years, his face lined not with bitterness, but with kindness. He walked as though time itself bowed before him. Curious, and with nothing left to lose, Elara stepped outside. For the first time in years, she let herself be seen, not as the beautiful maiden, not as the fallen star, but as a human being, broken and bare. Their eyes met. The monk did not flinch. He did not look away. He smiled, a simple, serene smile that spoke of worlds beyond suffering. "You have carried a heavy burden," he said, his voice like the soft rustle of ancient trees. "But the heaviest burdens are often the ones we choose to carry." Tears welled up in Elara's eyes. She fell to her knees before him, her pride crumbling into dust. "I have nothing left," she whispered. "I am no one. I have lost everything that made me special." The monk knelt beside her, placing a weathered hand on her shoulder. "My dear child," he said gently, "you have not lost what is real. You have merely lost what was never yours to keep." Elara looked up, confused, broken. The monk continued, his eyes shining with quiet truth. "Beauty fades, youth withers, riches slip through fingers like water, but the goodness of your heart, the kindness of your actions, the purity of your soul, these are treasures no fire can burn, no time can steal." He spoke of impermanence, the ancient truth that everything born must one day fade, that all who rise must someday fall. He spoke of the foolishness of clinging to things that were never meant to last. He spoke of the peace that comes from letting go. "To love a flower," he said, picking a fallen blossom from the ground, "is not to grasp it tightly until it withers. To love is to appreciate its beauty, knowing it will someday return to the earth." Something shifted inside Elara, a tiny crack in the walls she had built around her heart, a small but undeniable glimmer of understanding. The monk invited her to visit the monastery at the edge of the forest, a humble place where time seemed to move differently, slower, kinder. And so, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the wounds in her heart, Elara followed. At the monastery, life was simple. The monks rose with the sun, tended gardens, cared for the sick, and spent their days in meditation and prayer. No one cared for beauty or wealth or reputation. They cared only for compassion, truth, and awakening. For the first time, Elara saw a different kind of beauty, not the beauty of perfect skin or shining eyes, but the beauty of a soul unburdened by pride and fear. She struggled at first, Her old habits clung to her like vines. She wanted to be admired, to be praised. But slowly, patiently, through days of silent meditation, acts of service, and quiet reflection, she began to let go. She tended to the sick with gentle hands. She shared meals with the poor. She knelt in the gardens, dirt under her nails, grateful just to breathe, to be alive. And in those simple acts, she found a joy deeper than anything she had known before. Not the sharp, fleeting thrill of admiration, but a steady, glowing warmth, a peace that no one could give her, and no one could take away. One evening, as she knelt by the river that once reflected her vanity, she saw her reflection again. The lines on her face had deepened. The sparkle of youth had long since faded. But her eyes were different. They held a light that came not from outside admiration, but from within. Elara smiled, a real smile, one not born of pride or performance, but of true acceptance. She whispered to the river, to the stars, to herself, "I was never the beauty. I was the witness of beauty. I was never the flame. I was the light behind it." And the river, eternal and ever-changing, whispered back. Years passed, as quietly as a dream dissolving into the morning mist. Elara remained at the monastery, living each day with a heart wide open to the world. She no longer sought attention, no longer craved praise. Her days were filled with simple acts of kindness, gathering herbs for medicine, teaching orphaned children how to read, comforting the dying as they crossed the final threshold. In giving herself so completely, she found herself anew. And though her body grew frail and her hair silvered like the moonlight, her spirit shone brighter than ever before. The villagers, who once whispered cruelly about her downfall, now spoke of her with reverence, not for the beauty she once possessed, but for the beauty she had become. They came to the monastery with their troubles and their sorrows, and Elara welcomed them all. She listened without judgment. She spoke with a gentleness that soothed even the most wounded hearts. It was said that sitting with her, even for a moment, was like drinking cool water after a long, punishing journey through the desert. One fateful year, a terrible illness swept through the region. The villagers, terrified, fled their homes, locking their doors, abandoning even their own kin in fear. But Elara stayed. She moved from house to house, tending to the sick, offering herbs, cool cloths, and whispered prayers. She carried children in her arms, sang lullabies to the fevered, and held the hands of the dying so they would not leave this world alone. Her body grew weaker with each passing day. The illness clung to her, gnawed at her strength. And still she smiled. Still she gave until her final breath. Elara passed away at dawn, as the first light touched the earth. The entire village mourned. Men, women, children, all gathered in silence as monks carried her simple body wrapped in white cloth through the streets she once walked in pride, then in humility, and finally in boundless compassion. They built a shrine for her, not of marble or gold, but of wood and wildflowers. It stood by the river, the same river where she had once admired her fleeting reflection. And on that shrine, they carved words that would live long after their own bones turned to dust. True beauty is not seen with the eyes, but felt with the soul. As years turned into generations, Elara's story became legend. Children were taught not to chase appearances, but to cherish kindness, to honor truth, to love without clinging. And yet, the cycle of forgetting and remembering is the way of the world. One afternoon, many seasons later, a young girl named Amara wandered to the shrine by the river. She traced her fingers along the worn carvings, her brow furrowed in thought. Her friends stood nearby, gossiping and laughing about the newest, most beautiful girl in the village. They spoke of hair, of dresses, of skin fairer than milk. Amara turned and looked into the river. The water showed her own reflection, a face plain and unremarkable. A pang of sadness pierced her chest. If only I were beautiful, she thought. Perhaps then I would matter. But then her eyes caught the words on the shrine once more, old and faded, yet still whispering across the waters. True beauty is not seen with the eyes, but felt with the soul. And something stirred within her, a quiet, stubborn seed of understanding. She smiled softly to herself, the kind of smile that promised a different future, one born not from vanity, but from the courage to love and be loved as she was. The river flowed on, as it always had. The seasons would change, and faces would come and go. But somewhere deep within the heart of the world, the beauty Elara had awakened would never fade. What kind of beauty are you nurturing within yourself? The kind that time will steal, or the kind that will outlive even your name?